Hello everybody, my name is Link7 and today I'm bringing you guys my Prime 4 Beyond review slash thoughts. Now, quick things before we get into this. This is going to be my no spoiler, only early game footage review. In this video, I'm going to be covering the story, the world building, the combat, and the modern take on Prime. I will of course be addressing the controversies, which includes the desert and the amiibo feature. That's the main reason this video took so much longer than planned for, because now I have officially beaten the game twice. Once on normal, once on hard. Once without the amiibo feature, and once with. Because I wanted to make sure I had my own opinions of what it truly feels like with music on or off. Now, that being said, if you don't want to stick around throughout this whole video, I'm going to tell you what I think. I think that this game is good. I would give it about an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend people to buy it. If you would like to know why I believe so, then I would love for you to stick around. So that being said, why don't we get right into it? So let's start with the two main things, I guess, before we get into the nuances of things. That's what everyone at least wants to hear. Let's just get to it. And it's the main areas. So the main areas are basically the best thing with the game, and then the desert, which is one of those areas, is the worst. So in the game, there is basically 6 main areas. There are 5 scattered around at the edges and then 1 desert in the middle. Now, these 5 main areas are incredible, and they are just like a traditional Metroid game. And it is everything that we have wanted. And when you are playing them, it feels just like Prime 1. You boot up the game, you join this kind of space, area, and it feels sort of like the first one. You drop into the planet, you have this luscious green area, and the music starts, and you truly feel like you've been brought back 20 years, and you're in Prime 1 again. And even when you get to the second area, you're feeling like you're in this electric area, and there's these corridors, and you're also feeling like this is really fun, and this is really like a traditional area of Metroid Prime. But then you get out of this area, and you get open up into this desert, and you start to drive. And it is empty. Now, I want to mention that when I play this game, I don't use social media anymore. I have had social media deleted for over a month now, so I hadn't heard of all this controversy when I started playing. Twitch chat actually was the one who let me know. So, as someone who came into it not having any expectations, I kind of felt like, wow, this is empty. And I really didn't know what to think, and I was really scared that this open world thing was going to ruin the game. And I had a lot of people join my stream basically saying, is how much time is spent in this desert, because this desert looks bad. My honest thoughts of the desert is that it is slop. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like really boring to play, but I also wouldn't say that it's really fun. It really just felt like super middle of the road 5 out of 10. Now, believe it or not, despite me feeling that way, that did not make, and I think this is the big difference, a huge difference on my enjoyment of Prime. So my first playthrough of Prime 4, it took 17 hours. Now, just as a demonstration, I timed going from the top left of the map to the bottom right, which is the longest distance that you would have to travel. And that took about 2 minutes. So when it comes to going from one area to another, it never takes too much time. Now, at the very end of the game, there are some quests that you have to do throughout the desert. And I'm not going to go into details, but just know there's one thing you have to do in the desert, right? It's an area. I went for a kind of 100% completion, so I got every single unlockable in the desert. And the time it took me to do the main quest plus every single side quest in the desert was about 2 hours. That's how long it took me to 100% of this area, 2 hours. Now, as a whole, the playthrough took me about 17 hours. So I had 17 hours of playtime, and about 2 hours of those were spent in the desert. And I think that's why I look at this and I review this game higher than most other people. And there are other things that are not perfect I'm going to get into later, but I think this really is a summarization, if you don't want to watch the whole video of all of my takes, that you can take away of why I review it as an 8 out of 10. I grew up in a generation where I think Wind Waker is my favorite Zelda game, but I think that the Triforce quest was boring as a child. I love Twilight Princess. It's ranked 9.5 online, but I hate the tier collecting quest, which usually for a casual takes an hour and a half, 2 hours. I love Metroid Prime 1, but I think that the collection of all of these ruins was not fun either. But the thing for me is that I am okay with a few areas where the game is not perfect if the main gameplay gets me intrigued and makes it super fun for me. And that's how I rank this game, which is why I think I ranked it so high. Now, in regards to the controversy, I'm just going to mention it really quickly. So as someone who's now done 2 playthroughs of this, it's clear that the game was not made with music in mind for this area. Now, as a side note, I wish it was, trust me. I think that most people that are mad about this amiibo thing honestly just want music in the area. But I'll tell you now, as someone who played through the game with the music feature, that it is very clear that this was not a key feature that the game developers made and then they took out to be put as an amiibo. When I use the music feature, it is super clear this was a reward for 100% of the game, which it still is. And all the amiibo does is give you access to that early. So I think when people are really mad and feel like they took out a key gameplay feature and put it behind an amiibo, it's honestly misrepresented. And it's not a new track, to clarify. It's like a jukebox feature. You can play the other area themes, and you can play the theme song from Prime 1 and Prime 4. So it's really just a music collection that you can play as a radio feature, as a reward. So I think that's why I don't have as big of a problem with it. So I do wish they changed, like I said, and put more things in the desert and made a theme on its own. But I think people's true problem is that it was advertised, I think, on Twitter and a lot of other places as, hey, they took music, they hid it away behind 100%, and then they did that so that you have to buy this amiibo. But at least from playing with it and truly spending hours with that music feature now, it did not feel as though that was the case. But either way, that being said, that's the whole rant about the desert and the music. I knew I had to address it at some point in this review, so that's what I think differs a lot. Now, let's get into some of the caveats of things. So the other thing I think that Prime 4 did not do perfectly well is that one of the NPCs likes to backseat you. And it is very clear that the game wants to handhold you. So I think it was scared to be a true Metroidvania game where you get really lost and you have to figure out where to go. Now, I don't have a problem with an option to backseat. I think the thing I would have wished for is that he would only backseat if you've been lost for an hour, or maybe if you only called him. Because in Prime 1, that's sort of what it does. If you're lost for a while, it shows you on the map where you should go. But on this game, the second you go into the overworld, he will tell you where to go. It did not bother me too much because of how I play games. But if you are someone who does not want to be told a single thing, then you will not like that feature. You could probably maybe disable it through subtitles and text, at least and sound. I've heard people say that. Don't quote me on that though. Someone in the comments can probably let me know if you can disable him or how to do it, and I'll heart it. But either way, that's the other negative thing that I would say is bad. Now, in terms of the things that I think the game does okay, the unlockables. The unlockables, I think the game does okay. It doesn't do it as well as Prime 1, mostly just because, once again, I think they wanted to limit the backtracking. So it's more endgame loaded. So about half the unlocks are spread throughout the game, and half of them are put into the endgame areas. So it makes it so that more items are unlocked towards the end. The weapon imbalancing, it's not as perfect as Prime 1. About 70% of the enemies are solid and are done well. But then you have like 20 to 30% of the bosses where they should have changed how much damage they took, because they nerfed shooting in this game, so you can't spam as quickly as you can. Instead, there's only a certain amount of shots you can do a second. And that means that for main bosses, you might have to spend 5 minutes just shooting. So it just feels like a bullet sponge, and it kind of feels not awful, but like I said, okay, because you kind of feel like that was lackluster. That's, I think, the feeling you feel with some of the bosses. And the last thing is the story. The story has 2 main changes from the other Prime games. The first one is that they take an approach more similar to Dread, where they are a little bit more upfront with the story, where instead of only giving you story and lore through scans, it tells you more upfront about the main story of the game. And I really like that, because I am someone who does not like to scan everything usually. I do it for the completion, but I don't read the scans, so I put it that way. So I kind of like that the story was told to you more upfront. So I like that aspect. The thing that is not as well received is the NPCs. Now, disregarding the backseating part of it, I thought that the NPCs were just kind of whatever. It doesn't ruin the game, but it also doesn't add anything. It feels like an unnecessary change. And they're just kind of there and they talk and you're like, okay, cool. And then Samus just nods and doesn't say a word. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, okay, that's weird. Okay, let's keep going. That's really how it felt like. Now, I think overall, you probably listen to me if you're still here, and you probably think, how can you say all of this and rank this game an 8 out of 10? But I think this is just my perspective. I think I'm really looking at this game through the lens of like gray. I don't like when people draw things in black and white. And the really simple truth of why I like this game is because the things that I don't like as much did not ruin it for me. It just made it not great, maybe like a 4 out of 10. But those parts played such a small part of the game that it's not what I care the most about in Prime. When I think about my favorite moments in Metroid Prime is exploration. I remember walking into the ice world for the first time in Remaster and seeing Ridley flying over. I remember discovering the bosses. I remember going through the lava and falling in. I remember exploring areas. I remember looking around and I remember just being mesmerized by this world. And that is still how I felt playing Prime 4. To me, Prime games were never about the story being the key cornerstone. It was always about the atmosphere and world building, and that it still did well. The characters just didn't really make that big of an impact on what I look for in a Prime game. And same thing with the desert, like I said. I think I would have preferred a system where that did not exist, and it was a connective system like other games. However, it played such a small part on my overall playtime that it only lowered my score somewhat. So if I had to make an actual request for changes in this game, if I somehow could make Nintendo do a patch, I would say that I would ask for them to put a soundtrack for the desert that is made for it, that is like a cool lower ambient sound. I would ask that they balanced out the weapons and damage a little bit better. And that's probably it. And if they did that, I would probably bump up my rating from an 8 to like an 8.5. Because the weapons and damage is one thing I really do wish they would have balanced a bit differently. But anyways, that is my thoughts and opinions on Prime 4. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this format. Let me know if there's any other games in the future when I play, if you want to see more of this kind of an just open, honest talk review. And yeah, feel free to let me know what you think about Prime 4 in the comment section down below. The only thing I ask is that, be respectful. It's fine to disagree. But either way, that being said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all in the next one. Later, everybody. Bye-bye.